Hello, everybody. Welcome on the Lights on Data show. Today, we're going to talk about how to create a data culture. Something very important, something that a lot of people are asking, a lot of organizations are really striving to get there. And today, well, of course, we're going to learn this from our wonderful guest, Akif, but I'll let Diana introduce him.
Our guest today is at this moment a program manager for trust and safety at TikTok, working in the South Asian markets. Besides that, he is also an analyst, an analytics advisor for Intelligent Machines Limited, and a data trainer and consultant focusing on data-driven decision making, storytelling with data, data strategy and culture, and machine learning. Welcome, Saki.
Thank you so much for inviting to the show, George and Dana.
It's amazing to have you here. I am really excited to talk about your professional experience. But before we start, tell us a little bit about what you do in your free time, or maybe where you've traveled, or what you're doing on the weekend. Anything you feel like sharing with us today.
So normally I'm like a board game junkie
Ah,
in home. So
amazing. So is George. So when you come and
tomorrow my
visit, we can play.
tomorrow my full day is booked on Catan. Specifically, like few of us friends, we got Seafarers expansion. So need to explore that. So that's one of the things. The other thing that I do, I love driving around. So which is a pain point because I'm in Singapore and I've driven almost every corner as possible. So I want to drive around in new places. And other than that, I also am a chef. I like cooking.
Hmm.
So
Wow,
I
those are
love
my
it.
free time hobbies.
that's wonderful, Sakif. And some of our previous guests were actually drawing parallels between cooking and data. So they find a lot of relationship between the two. And
So should we talk about data culture or
I,
better about board games or cooking?
right,
That
right.
sounds all
No, I
right.
mean, I get that because I mean, preparation is all about like cooking is all about preparation, right? And data preparation is all about getting the best out of data. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well said.
Wow, this can become a quote.
Hmm.
All right. So, actually, let's dive into the subject. What is a data culture?
So this is actually, I would say, something that I learned from my experiences over and over again. That when we started, so I'll give a broad answer here. So when I started on working with companies to make them data driven, so initially it felt like what a company needs to be data driven is a good collection mechanism, good collection storage and reporting mechanism, and that of using the data to make decisions. But then the more I worked with companies, one of the things that I got that got highlighted again and again, that even with the right data collection, even with the right tools or right storages or right pipelines, what happens is a lot of companies just let data be there as a business intelligence report, as a new trend or something like sales increase or sales decrease or a sales report or a route report or something, and they let it be. So the difference of really making use of data to make decisions or
Hmm.
really use data to drive strategies,
Hmm.
and one where the data report is there in a dashboard in the top right corner of your desktop or in your desk, the difference is the culture here. That is, in a data culture, like data culture helps you convert that collection. See, we live in the age of data, right? So data collection is not a challenge anymore. Data storage, not a challenge anymore. But what matters is, can you build in that? So another term I use for data culture is something I call the data DNA. So do you have the data
Hmm.
DNA within an organization that, okay, say, I'll give you an example. So say if you ask a sales manager that, okay, for this region, what would you expect the spikes to be? And say the sales manager comes back and tells you that, okay, I think the spikes are because of my previous experiences, this or this or this. And that is perfectly fine. Experience will never be replaced by anything. So there is this experience. But if you can follow up, if the organization always follows up saying that, okay, I value your experience, but can you show me some evidence as well, some fact finding on this, some trends that can support it?
Yeah.
So when this question becomes asked on a regular basis within an organization, everyone's just talking about it, and this gets settled that, okay, fine, you want to do an analysis, then first let's start with the fact finding, let's build up on that, let's summarize the findings we have, and then let's take a decision. So that is the epitome, I would say, of something called a data culture.
That's a great example. And do you think then it always needs to start from the top? The tone needs to always be given by somebody at the top?
So this is where I would say it's a kind of like a two-way approach.
Hmm.
So I think first of all, it's definitely the strategists of the organization, the leaders of the organization need to set that tone. So one of the wonderful things I've experienced when I've been working in TikTok is this whole data evidence-based culture. Whenever we are presenting in front of the team leads, we're presenting in front of our region leads, they always really appreciate if I can just give a summary of the data. Even like it doesn't need to be a prediction, doesn't need to be a fancy analysis. It can just be a simple histogram, a pie chart,
Hmm.
or even
Hmm.
a simple table. So that's one. So we know when we are working that it's beneficial to get my point across if I can support with some facts, if I can support
Hmm.
with some evidence.
Hmm.
But at the same time, so that's a top down approach. But I believe only top down will not help you, because if you ask people to give you data evidences and everything, then you need to support it with tools, with systems in place so that people can actually give that data driven decision to you. So that's where I think it also comes to from bottom up, where employees need to also understand that okay, to answer these questions in an evidence driven manner, to answer these questions in a data driven manner, what do we need? Do we have access to the right dashboards? Do we have access to the right data sources? And even if do we have access to say build queries to get the right data out? Because if you don't have the right data, how can you build a data driven narrative or a data driven decision making?
Hmm.
So I would say both sides.
So do you refer now to IT people? Do you refer to all the people in the organization when you talk about data culture? What population are you referring to?
So I am actually talking about through the organization, all throughout the organization. Because say, for example, my role here in TikTok, it's more of a strategy role and less on a data role. It's more like a program manager role. And I've seen to be a data driven organization, it needs to go through and through. Say for example, someone from human resources, they want to share, okay, that this has been like the right hires, or this has been like the learnings from the hire. So even there you can support it with HR data.
Yeah.
So, for example, a data can come in okay, these are the people we have hired over time, and these are the people having good performance reviews. They have stayed back. Those who have went away had these in common, and this can be just a simple, just simple exploratory analysis.
I love this, Akif, and I feel a lot of companies, organizations are. This is sort of the golden standard that they're aiming to get to, but a lot are not there, and they're having a lot of challenges to get there. What do you think it's so hard for companies to have that data culture?
I think if you ask me about that, I'd give few answers here. So, the first one, I think the key problem starts with a level of inertia.
Hmm.
And that inertia, technically, I feel comes from also a level of, I would say, you know a lot of people in different stages of the organization, specifically senior, people with enough experience or previous years of experience, what happens is a lot of them, and this is interestingly from my observation, what I've seen is mid-level people, mostly not really seniors, but mid-level people have this resistance to the fact that I mean, we have done stuff X, Y, and Z way. This was the right way. Why do we need to change? We think
Hmm.
based on our experience this is right. We think based on our experience this is the right tool. So if I give you an example, a few days back I was training this market research in organization in Bangladesh, and they're a branched out organization from Nelson, Bangladesh, which is like the AC Nelson's office there. So
Hmm.
these are market researchers with 12, 14 years of experience, and the training session was on Power BI, that how they can use use Power BI better to do their survey analysis. And considerable amount of my first hours of the training went by explaining them how Excel is good, but Power BI can complement Excel, because they were in that mental zone where they're like, you're showing us this, but we have been doing in Excel the same thing all along.
Right.
What's special about Power BI? So this inertia is, I think, the first hurdle. The second hurdle, so this is this inertia makes it harder for people to buy in to this concept of, okay, why should I have to give evidence? I am the expert here. I know this has been done all the way like this. So why do you need more data here? So that's one. The other hurdles are actually legacy systems, I say, because a lot of times organizations want to be data driven, but they're legacy systems. It requires quite a lot of investment to change their legacy systems. So, to give you another example, 2 years back, I was looking into this footwear company in Bangladesh. And so a friend of mine works there, and they are actually like, they export leather to like, leather quality shoes to Puma, Adidas, and these companies.
Hmm.
So now one of the things they wanted to do is like they wanted me to help them predict the international sales. So I was like, can I get some data points there to start thinking? And the moment I start getting the data points, I figure out that the key problem here is actually their MRP or the ERP they're using. They actually invested around, I think, 2011 or 12, a lot of money to get a very good ERP. But
Yeah.
the ERP system was so legacy, like it was such a legacy system that the data points they were getting was not enough, was not in a way that I can actually use, Arima or any other time series models to make prediction. And so this small problem. So initially, when the discussions started, I was like, dude, maybe I'll just give me a time series, and I'm just gonna give you some predictions. It turned out to be a solution where I asked them, like, you need to change your MRP, which becomes a $1 million investment then.
Absolutely. And sometimes
So
that's really the trigger that companies want to be a bit more data driven, have data driven decisions, and then they need to invest a lot into their tools, but also data governance and other data management areas as well. Absolutely. And I know you're mentioning that it's great if you can incorporate that data in the growth strategy of a company. And I would imagine that it's easier for a new company like TikTok was
mhm,
to start from the get go, but
mhm.
not as maybe not as easy for an older company like Microsoft, let's say, um, that would want to get into that data culture stream. And do you have any recommendations on how companies can incorporate into their strategy? Um,
I think for change, so this is actually the area of what we say the org change or organizational change, right?
yeah.
So I believe in a very, very, very simple model of organizational change. It's actually not even like a very technical one. It's basically is what we call the carrot and stick approach.
Hmm.
So I mean, for a mule to move, you need a stick in front of it. Sorry, a carrot in front of it, but sometimes you need the stick as well. So I think it's for all large organizations, it's difficult to change. But then you need to incentivize the change. People like employees in different stages needs to understand like how being data driven, being part of this evidence driven culture is beneficial for them.
Hmm.
So, for
Hmm.
example, I've seen like, I've been into conversations where I would say that, okay, like the manager, middle manager, or someone in the middle, they're like, no, 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 no. What you're saying is good. That's very theoretical. That's very, high thought. But based on our experience, maybe this is not right. So then I'm like, okay, do whatever you're doing, use the legacy system, but can you just also see what the data tells you? Just see that, like, just do a summary of the data, do a single histogram, do a single stacked column chart, and just tell me what you see. And just that spark of just asking them to do a single visualization to see what the data tells you sometimes gives them enough push, because they see that, okay, I think this, but I also see this. And if the data supports some of their thinkings and yet shows them something new, that's when the buy-in starts. So, but it takes time. It cannot be done overnight.
Yeah.
It absolutely cannot be done overnight. So, what you need is, if you're a large organization and if you want to be like, shifting your culture, then what you need is change champions, people within teams who are excited, who are interested in the new thing, who are eager to learn, and who can start. And when they start using, say, different dashboards, different queries, different types of data in their decision making, then again, incentivize. That is, you know, give them that floor, give them that visibility to the rest of the team. That look,
Hmm.
we are doing X, Y, and Z, but this guy did A, B, C and give us something better.
Hmm.
So Let's leave him the floor. Let's, in a weekly, team weekly meetings or a monthly all hands meeting, let him present. Let him or her present her what she did, what are the steps they have done, what enhanced it. Because this is one thing I see, even in, say, in South Asian markets. In the banking sector, there is this inertia. The inertia is stronger because financial systems are very entrenched in financial calculations. So in those times, or in those situations, you can't just ask them to change. What you can do is first enhance, then run your new systems parallelly, and
Hmm.
then show that, okay, the old system is not bad, but with the new system you can do a little bit better, and the marginal gain of the new system is really high.
I love this, and I've seen this with data visualizations. For example, a lot of people prefer pie charts as an example, or they prefer just seeing the data in a tabular view,
Mhm.
and they're very reticent of that change. So what do? You kind of create a side-by-side visualization that you can present the same data in a different way, and slowly you're getting them adjusted and accustomed to other ways of visualizing that data and interacting with it. Maybe now not having to be printed, but have it in a more interactive dashboard that you can look at digitally and maybe go more in depth if you
Mhm.
wanted to and apply filters and so on. But I feel if you do the change from the start and not providing them with the old way at the same time, the resistance to change, it seems to be greater.
Mhm. To add to your pie chart example, so a few days back I was actually exactly doing this. So I help few, say, I would say, consulting organizations with, say, when they do surveys and stuff, they come to me and I give them, very quickly in Tableau or Power BI, some simple charts or dashboards. So there is this resistance to pies, shifting from pies. I mean, somehow pies just became like a gold standard for survey answers. I don't know why, but there is this resistance. So the way to handle is very simple. I give them, say, for example, say, consider a question in terms of, say, work-life happiness. You're asking employees that how good you have, you have work-life happiness, where it's a Likert scale of, strongly disagree to strongly agree.
Hmm.
Now, a pie can show you the distribution of that, right? Five groups and five pies there. But then I put in the next question. Okay, do you want one pie to show answer to one question, or do you want this question broken down into an interesting insight on which, if you have data on, say, how long an employee is in that organization? So do you want to see a relationship between length of employment, which can be binned as well in groups,
Right,
and their happiness, work-life happiness?
right.
Maybe that would be a better insight without just looking at just work life happiness. So then I give them three options: one filled column chart,
Hmm.
one stacked column chart, one is a column chart with is, the whole visualization area is divided into, say, different groups of years of employment.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And when they see it, it's sold. They're like, okay, we could not get that in pie, which we can get that in these column charts.
That's great. It's great that, yeah, you're providing them with the carrot.
Yeah.
We have a question here from Christine that I wanted to take, and she's asking, how can company leaders stress the importance of data if an employee's job is not directly related to dealing with data analysis? And I think you've
This is
given an example with HR there, but yeah, sorry to interrupt. Go
No
ahead.
worries, no worries, no worries. So I think this is a very good question, Christine. So thank you for asking this. So I think if the employee's core job is still not data analysis, it's still, say, decision making in different region. It could be like choosing the right store, choosing the right product, thinking of the right campaign, or even, say, researching on, say, suppose let's consider an example which is very could be or sounds like very less data driven. Maybe designing the hashtag of a campaign, or thinking of, which type of tone in a campaign would help. So, and for these, experienced marketeers have very good idea, right? But then they can enhance it. So what you can do is you can always talk to them as leaders, as department heads. You can tell them that, okay, your insights on customer, what the customer is going to like, what the customer's messaging is going to be, is invaluable. But let us also see what other hashtags are very popular for this customer group, for this user group. And for that, you can use those social media listening tools such as Talkwalker, where you
Hmm.
can just search a hashtag and see, what type of people are talking about a hashtag, how much positive sentiment is there, how much negative sentiment is there. So I believe giving them the tools. See, it's again, so where what makes a person being having an inertia to a new thing? It's basic economics of cost, right? That as long as you consider the cost to be higher than the benefit you're getting, and you know that, okay, because in your mind, as an employee who's not a data analyst, you are doing something and you have been doing this long time and you're doing it regularly. So you think that it works, and it works because you're doing it regularly. So no questions about it. It works. So for you, like, for your perception, the benefit is high for that. But now comes a new method, which has a high cost, and you're questionable about the benefit that you might get, and you know that your schedule is busy, your boss wants you to give you some few things immediately or maybe by the end of the day, and you're like, why should I look into a new tool? So that's where I think the way to solve the problem is providing the transition to the tool to be easy. So, simple dashboards, or even organization having simple tutorials to hop on a new tool to get some more data to enhance the analysis, reduction to the cost of a new thing. So within an organization, if it's a large organization, then my advice is, building systems, building in-house softwares that make it easy to
Hmm.
say, read a Power BI dashboard, read, like, go into Tableau, give some, have some good documentation of tutorials, have some video tutorials there, so that, the learning and development team can drive this as well. Any organization's L&D team or the training team, they can come in, they can have these library of tutorials, use cases. And at the same time, leaders can from time to time also, see that people who actually use these tools, try to highlight them in front of other employees. So, just reducing that mental barrier to move to a new tool, to move to being data driven, that itself, if you reduce the cost, there is a high chance of conversion.
Mhm. So I'll just summarize what you said because there were so many great ideas. So first of all was create desire for change by showing people what is possible for that, what's in it for them, why it is beneficial for them to accept or to adopt the change. So that was one thing that you mentioned. Then you also mentioned the idea of champions. So people
Mhm.
who adopt the change a little bit, who are excited about the change or about the data culture and can um, show what it's possible with it, and probably also be the ones who help the other people who are not that eager or responsive. Then you mentioned training as well,
Mhm.
and a phased approach. So allow them to keep the old systems in place for a while, and but at the same time introduce the new technology so they can start using it bit by bit until they become confident. So I think these are, of course, you know, great points there. State of the art change management. And I just wanted to add to this communication. So the idea that communication is important, and the idea is to communicate at the right time with the right amount of information in order not to overwhelm people or not to scare them away, to pour all new information at once.
True, true, true.
So that being said, I wanted to ask you, who do you think should be responsible in an organization to deal with this idea of change management?
So I think what, like, from the organization side, it should be senior leadership.
Hmm.
It should be someone from, like, really high up on the organization, because in the end, change. So another thing that I've seen when consulting organizations is that change from bottom up, or expecting the bottom up to, evolve into really industry highest standards, is really not feasible.
Hmm.
More feasible approach is if you drive it from the top. You have, I mean, the CEO or the CXOs need to set a, like, a vision there, need to set a mission there, that, okay, I want to be like, we want to be this using this data, or we want to shift from, okay, say, let me again give you an example here. Say from a bank's perspective. Okay, from a so I worked with this non-banking financial institute, NBFI, in Indonesia. So it's called Tunaiku. It's a lending micro lending platform. So interesting thing about micro lending is that Indonesia doesn't have, like, I mean, the unbanked rates in Indonesia is pretty high. So their micro lending was planned to, reduce that unbanked rate.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in order to do so, what they needed, so here the classical banking calculations are not that helpful, because people who are unbanked doesn't have a banking statement. You can't do those, credit risk calculations to these people.
Right.
So at a point, you need to know other ways to figure out that who would be a defaulter and who would not be a defaulter. So here, to like the CEO of that company decided to be data driven, and his main goal was like, we want to be like, we want data to tell us who's gonna default or not. And what they did was something incredible. So what they did is, like, they actually convinced the investors to give them money, which they gave out as, unsecured loans of many different micro amounts to many different people, like extreme variety of people.
Mm-hmm.
Convinced, like the CEO actually convinces investors that, consider it as buying data.
Mm-hmm.
Don't expect a single dollar to be paid back.
Mm-hmm.
Consider itself to be buying data, because this way I would know who's going to default and who's not going to default. And there
Interesting.
they put the
So,
data. Yeah,
yeah.
and they build the model on that. Okay. And now the reason I'm giving you this example is, when this model is out there, now many Indonesian banks are also thinking of it.
Mm-hmm.
They're thinking of, okay, maybe their credit risk model might be better than the classical financial risk calculations, or might improve on it. So what happens is, it needs a buy-in from the top, because if the top expects the company to auto become data driven, that would be difficult. But it needs a buy-in from the top, a push from the top.
Sponsorship.
Yeah,
I guess in this example, the bank would be able to kind of resell the data as well, or sell it to other banks that want to get into.
I mean, the CEO I'm talking about. So this is the funny thing. He's now the advisor to the national bank,
Mm-hmm.
and he came from an NBFI, so
Mm-hmm.
non-banking financial institute. He's not a classical banker. He's actually a tech guy.
Nice.
Well done. Yeah, I love that example, and that's such an interesting concept to the way that the business model is built initially. That, hey, we don't have any data on this, we need to invest money into it, and what's the best way to do it? Well, let's really buy it from the
Exactly.
individual themselves.
I mean, so the reason I love this story, and I share it with I mean, I teach analytics to a university in Bangladesh as well. So I teach, like,
Amazing.
in the business students business analytics. So even there, I share this story with them because of a simple reason. You know, you could have, like, this person could have bought data or collected, like, market surveys and stuff like that. But what he did was something way beyond, like, normal imagination, I would say. That, just give out some loans that's going to fail. Now, I wonder, I wish I could be in that board meeting where he was saying it, because I want to see in my own eyes how the investors responded. Because, I mean, it takes guts, right? It would take a lot of gut to go up to your investor and say that, give him the money, and I'm just going to throw it away.
Absolutely, I would love to see that business case presentation and how he was able to convince him, for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Um,
that would be a lesson to us
yeah,
all.
exactly.
So, do you have any recommendations, Aki, for startup companies that they do want to become data driven, of course, or from the get go? Do you have any recommendations for them on how they should put the right foot?
So my suggestions are actually, like, conditional. So the first condition is to understand what level of data would be in a part of the business model.
Mm-hmm.
So few startups, I mean, everywhere data can support. But the first question is the startup model a data driven model, or where data is a key supporter to the model? So if your company is, like, starting to be data driven, say for example, the company I advise now as an analytics advisor, Intelligent Machines, they're a company which builds SaaS products, SaaS data products, and turnkey data products for larger companies in Bangladesh and abroad. Now, for them, the business model is data because they want to build products which are data driven.
Right.
Or say if you're a rideshare platform, if you are an e-commerce platform, even then your key component is data. But at the same time, think of, say, a manufacturing organization where you're manufacturing, where data is a key supporter, not the key lifeblood or key component. So the first question is identifying which is it? Is it a key component or is it a key supporting item? So if it's a key component, then I think you need to. So when we do these business model canvases or lean canvases, make sure you identify in within your business model canvas or the lean canvas exactly what are the data touch points.
Mm-hmm.
So you start with, say, what do we do when we design these campuses, canvases? We think of an USP, the key value proposition. So now translate the key value proposition on, like, first of all, what data is involved with the key value proposition. Second of all, what you can do to enhance the key value proposition using data. And then ask yourself, what is the ideal data that you can get? I mean, so this is where I would get a little, annoying, that I tell people to think of the ideal data, but I know that you can't get the ideal data. That's real life. I mean, a few days back, I think I said to someone that, there is nothing called unbiased data either.
Mm-hmm.
Every data has biases and
Mm-hmm.
limitations, but it's better to start with the top. We sort of like playing God and thinking like, okay, well, this is the best you can get.
Yeah.
Okay, you can't get that. So what is the next best you can get? But I always prefer this line of thinking because that kind of gives you something which has limitations, but it's the closest to best you can get. So
Right.
that would be for companies who think data is to be their lifeblood. Okay. But on the other hand, for companies where data is a key supporting component, that basically means that they are not in the business of data, but data can support them a lot. Data can help them refine their business a lot. For them, I think it is important to first set up their systems, set up their USP, set up their business, and spend some time. Because within time, you'll be collecting data. So one is like data being the lifeblood, where you need the models, where you need the systems in place. But if the data is not being the lifeblood, then what you need is you need to collect data over time, because you can't start with a large amount of data, right? So you need to collect data over time, build up your systems, understand exactly in the business model where data can enhance your business model, then design collection mechanisms. And when you do design collection mechanisms, automate the design like collection mechanisms and have a plan that, okay, we are going to collect for, say, next 3 months or next 6 months. And then we're going to sit again and revisit our business model to see what parts of our business model can really benefit from the data that we have collected.
I like that. Yeah.
That's
I actually suggested this to one of my clients very recently. They're a ride share. They're not actually ride share. So it's in Bangladesh again, and they actually help in transportations. So, in Bangladesh, one of the issues we have is like the public transportation quality is not really up there. And
Mm-hmm.
specifically for, female gender security is an issue. So, which is why what we have is like there's this company called Shuttle. What they do is like they arrange rides from office to home or office to pickup areas in different areas in the capital city, and they
Mm-hmm.
have become pretty popular. So they have recently got some really good foreign fundings as well, VC fundings. So one of their main work is thinking of coming up with new routes, and that's where I know that their main business model is not driven by data, but data can support identifying the right routes, support identifying the need for new vehicles in different routes, need for designing new routes. And that's why
Absolutely.
right now I'm consulting them to set up that data, to build a system on that data.
That's so interesting. Yeah, and how to, like you said, optimize well, all their processes and their
Yeah.
routes, and yeah.
maybe to use a little bit this what you just said. Can you tell us what you do as a consultant? What kind
So
of projects you have?
So normally I come in as few things. First of all, for mostly startups, and also for companies who are interested to transition to data-driven decision making and data-driven strategy, I help them transition. And for startups to, they reach out to me in terms of like, okay, at which point they want to be data driven, because a lot of startups I've also pushed back, telling them that no, 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 first design the product, first let it launch, and then let's be data driven. You can't just invest in a data team to start with. because that startups, a big question is like, value for money, right? I mean, utilization rate. So you can't really invest a lot of money and then not get the best out of it. So
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the things that I do. The other things that I do is I train organizations. I train organizations teams. So for example, the microcredit organization I was telling about, I was training their team to use machine learning to enhance their credit scoring, enhance their credit mechanisms, make better predictions, so stuff like that.
And that was their data team or their
So it was
just
their whole
strategy team?
microcredit thing.
Okay.
So including the strategy, because they need to also understand what the outputs are. Because I can
Mm-hmm.
train the data team on, say, recursive partitioning or random forests, but if the decision maker doesn't buy it, if the buy-in is not coming there, and if they are like, okay, what you're talking about right now is almost close to for alien language,
Mm-hmm.
then it's not going to help. So training both the teams, the technical team to be technical, at the same time the decision maker team to understand that what does actually stacking mean. Because I mean, although I can give you equations for stacking, but there are some simple examples of stacking, or what is bootstrapping, or what a random forest actually does for you.
Absolutely. I'm curious, Sakif, with TikTok, in TikTok's case, were they data driven from the start, or did they launch the product and then they became data driven?
I think the product of TikTok requires you to be data driven from start, because it's a
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
platform product.
Mm-hmm.
And the moment you start plugging in and getting videos and getting contents, that's data. Spot on, like in every content, comment, likes, shares, everything is data. So I think it falls under the industry which is the most heavily data driven at this point, the social media industry. So I think for them to have these systems in place was mandatory
Yeah.
to even exist. So
Right.
Mm.
Yeah. And I love that example because it's a company that's really raised up so quickly. And again, it's another case for data, why data strategy is important, why data decision making is needs to be at the top. Yeah.
I have a question that I wanted to ask, but I there was
Go
no
ahead.
space for it.
uh,
I believe that also the hiring process can be important. So, would you agree that maybe when new people come to the organization, maybe one of the aspects that need to be talked about in the or discussed in the interview, or yeah,
Okay, the hiring
discuss, yeah,
process.
yeah, if that helps with creating a data driven culture, and if this is something that, I don't know, you agree with, what approach would you suggest?
so here I would say that, of course, I mean, in an ideal world, I would want the right candidate with the right data capabilities, or at least the right curiosity to build up that skill.
Mm.
But then we do have limitations as well, right? So maybe say we want someone experienced, but experienced in a field that might not be very data driven. At which point it would be like, a question that, do you want to hire someone new who's very, open to learn, or do you want to hire someone who might actually have the risk of inertia, but
Mm-hmm.
that experience might be helpful as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there I would actually do like, kind of side with experience more to start
Mm-hmm.
with,
Mm.
because you can still hire someone who might be having an inertia to shift to data driven, but then you can reduce the cost of that inertia. You can create systems around. So you can actually say, have a note with that person's line manager that, okay, he or she might be very experienced on this idea or this area, and they can come up with ideas brilliantly. But if you can work on building up that skill on, like, being more data driven, or at least appreciating how data can help. So I think that's where training comes in, and that's where onboarding or orientation comes up, like, adds a lot of value. Because even within the orientation, if you can impress upon the person who's joining that, our company is this straight data driven, or we value data, we value evidences, we value your experience, of course, but we value evidence backed decisions. And say, we always, like, onboarding package, you're always given by your mentor or your buddy or the person who's supporting you or your line manager some examples, like, we want something like this. You want to set thresholds, you want to set benchmarks. So have these benchmarks have a level of evidence driven culture in it,
Hmm.
because you can still shift. But I would also value experience there.
That's a very good point. Would you then think that it's easier to hire somebody that has a lot of experience, that are not data driven, but you want to onboard them and have them become data driven in an organization where data culture is already there? Is it easier to do that than getting somebody like that where you're trying to form that data culture, but it's not there? You don't have these processes in place. So then maybe at that point, you want to think more on hiring somebody that brings in the data piece with them as
Yes.
well.
So that would be my next point. That if, as a company, you want to shift to be having like a data culture, then
Hmm.
I think it's more important to invest in people who are have experiences in data-driven cultures, because they
Hmm.
can bring in their expertise, their expectations, and their systems, their SOPs, which are already data-driven. So if you're shifting, if you're transforming, if you're changing to be a data-driven culture, then I think the hiring decisions will be more like favorable towards someone who comes from such a company
Hmm.
or who comes from that background.
Hmm. Do you have a recommendation here for Kevin Manko? He's wondering, how do you help business leaders to understand the difference between leading and lagging indicators? In other words, how do you shift the focus to leading metrics that can to be influenced and truly drive decisions?
So I think in terms of leading and lagging indicators, the way to explain to business leaders, if you ask me, I'd go it in these steps. That first of all, you know, it's good to show both the indicators, because I mean a lot of times it might be that the leaders might be in favor of the lagging indicator because that has been something that they have been comfortably following. It's again the concept of all inertia, that a lot of times maybe a new indicator comes up which is so new, which you see as a decision maker, you someone working within the organization, see that could be a key indicator or a KPI, but maybe the organization is missing it out. At which point I think it's very important to highlight the indicator that you want to highlight, but at the same time compare with the other lagging indicators there is. Have a simple comparison, take some time, have a simple comparison either across a certain time period or across certain industries, or whether it's a cross sectional or a time series data. Have the performance of two indicators side by side with the outcome objective that you're looking. So what do you when you're calling about a leading indicator, so that means it impacts an outcome, right? It might be your market share, it might be your new users, it might be people who buy your product. So put your outcome indicator in one place, we call the y variable in one place, and put your different x's. You put in your lagging indicators and the leading indicators and see that one unit of change or a marginal change in leading indicator impacts your y variable like this. Your marginal changes in the lagging indicator impacts your y variable like this.
Hmm.
And then based on these differences, show them that, because if it's truly a leading indicator, by that definition, it should have more marginal impact on your um, outcome variable. The moment you show them, I think, I mean, a rational business leader should buy it. Though I would say there a level of data storytelling would be required, because I mean,
Mm.
um, I mean, storytelling helps a lot, and I am a big fan of Cole Nussbaumer. I mean, her book, storytelling with data, is something I mean, it's a must read for anyone who wants to work with me. And that website is someone like I always suggest people to go there, because it's communication in the end. It's storytelling. I mean,
Yeah.
regardless of, I mean, a lot of people say that, okay, this is a technical field. Completely, of course, this is definitely technical. We need to know coding, we need to know the math behind it. But in the end, if you fail to tell your story, world's best model might just lie in your desktop.
Hmm. Agree. Yes, and I do recommend her book and her books and course as well. It's top notch for sure. We have a question here related to the previous topic that we were talking about, hiring, and this person from Uday Academy was wondering, when we hire somebody with data experience, should we always hire folks from the same industry, or maybe can you cross pollinate and have somebody with a telecom experience would they work well within banking? Does that really matter?
So here the question would be, so I would, there's no, I mean, black and white answer here. It's a risky call. So depends on what? Depends on, say, suppose the post you're hiring is a pivotal post. It's actually a key post, and the person you're hiring needs to take decisions that might, I mean, literally make or break a company, or might really impact the company. In which case, I think familiarity of the industry comes in play. So if you're, choosing, say, senior management, or even when, so I'll say that even when choosing senior management, you need to think about it. Like, what's your company status at this point? If you are in a company where, say, you need someone who's very experienced to take some key decisions because they're coming in, and you would know that because you're in the company, in which case I would defer to industry experience. But suppose you're on a company where you are right now thinking of pivoting to be a better company, shifting or changing to be a more data driven company, in which case maybe from within your industry, but if someone comes outside your industry but he or she has good background on converting companies to be data driven, or not even not a good background, but comes from a company which is very data driven. So the example, the question Uda Academy asked, right, that maybe for a bank, a telco background. So if the position is for someone who's building a new model to predict non-performing loans, which may be something the company has, like the bank doesn't have at this point. Maybe hiring from someone who's from telco might be a very good idea. It's a risky idea, but it's good because you're bringing in a new, fresh perspective. Maybe a model which a telco company uses to predict churn can turn out to be a good predictor for a non-performing loan. But yes, if you're bringing that person in a situation where your company is suffering from non-performing loans, it's suffering from financial loss, then maybe playing safe is a better idea.
Mm. Yeah. What do you think, Diana?
No, excellent points. So I have nothing to add. I'm just waiting for all this information to sink in my brain and to learn from
I
Sakif.
did talk a lot. So
Oh, no. We love that, and you're offering a lot of very useful information. We do want to encourage people to follow you on LinkedIn. I'll post a link here, and I'll also post it in the comments if anybody's watching this live. And I see that a lot of people are, and which I'm not surprised by. But please follow Sakif, as he has a lot of great things to offer, and he's also providing consultancy and advisory
Training.
services and training, which I think anybody can benefit from. So if you're a startup that you're looking for becoming data driven, look no further than Sakif. If you're also a conference organizer, I also encourage you to reach out to Sakif, because as you notice, he gives amazing information out there for people to learn from. So please get in touch with him.
thank you so much, both of you.
Sakif, it's been a pleasure to have had you on the show, and we really hope that we're going to cross paths again and hopefully meet in person soon.
And play a board game, of
play a
course.
board game, yes.
Of course.
Would you say that Settlers of Catan is a data-driven game, or is just a lot of luck there?
No, actually, so this is sorry, I'm not gonna go on a rant with Catan because so I had a discussion a few days back with a friend about Risk or Catan, and I kind of shifted to the side of Catan because I think Catan, the design of Catan is very less luck driven. Yes, you need luck, but you need strategy, and I think it helps in data in terms of like your experience, because you start picking up that there are a few tricks that you need to keep in mind, and how you think long term versus short term. Because I mean, when I mean long term versus short term, when you need to build cities in Catan, you need specific resources. So it's sometimes better to focus on them to start with. That gives you a lot of benefit in the later stages. So those are insights you pick up from patterns.
Yeah. So now I really have an appetite to play Settlers, by the way. So I hope we can do that soon as well.
Of them, so.
All right, everybody.
Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you very much for being here for the questions. And I wish everyone a very, very happy weekend. And thank you so much, Sakif, again, for being here and for sharing this amazing insights from your very vast experience. It was really, really helpful. Thank you.
You're most welcome, and thank you so much for having me in the show. And it was like an absolute pleasure meeting you too. I mean, I do plan to come to Canada because my best friend is there, so I will come. So maybe this winter or maybe next year, I'm sure shot coming. I'll definitely drop a line.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, everybody.
That's amazing.
Have a
Thank
great
you.
weekend.
Bye.
Bye.